approach the two in a very different way, because disruptive innovations can really change things completely, or they can crash and burn very quickly. Sustainable innovation is just a way of life for a business owner. Any business owner that has stopped innovating is basically just killing the business very, very slowly.
And Hesham, we haven't forgotten you. But I know, aside from being CEO of the Australian Graduate School of Leadership, you work very closely here with the Emirates Innovation Hub.
Definitely.
Can you just explain a little bit about your experience with EIH, and particularly on how much innovation is enough, the researching, testing, and I believe you have a phrase, celebrating innovation within that organization?
We started actually with a very basic question. What do we need? What's the ultimate goal? What's the end in mind? Like, you started with the end goal in mind. Definitely any organization, when they approach us, they are asking us a very simple, or asking for a simple request, which is, I want to see a lot of innovation in my organization. I want to see like things happening, things changing, transformation, full-on transformation. And the simple rule we use, we say, if you focus too much on the goal itself, you're not going to achieve it. You need to focus on the behavior. That's what Roberto mentioned, like, the culture itself, the culture of innovation. And once you talk about behavior, you start to break it down. 3 main components. Starts with the thinking, people engaging and thinking about innovation. The dialogue of innovation, is there good dialogue, positive dialogue about innovation in the organization? And definitely we look at finally at the performance, the way we do things. Most of the time, most people start changing a bit of policy, and then instead of doing it this way, let's do it that way. So they focus only on one side of the behavior. Again, when we started with 3 things, focusing on 3 things, the Emirates Innovation Hub. We wanted to research innovation, what is happening, how much innovation is happening inside the organization, trying to answer the question, is it enough? And then testing innovation. A typical issue or challenge that faces organizations here, especially when they are under pressure either from regulatory authorities or from the stakeholders of the customers to make immediate change, they go on full implementation scale. And the best way to go about it is actually to test, to pilot things first, to find out, is this going, instead of applying it, the project or the change across 100 or 500 organizations, let's do it with 10 and find out, measure, ensure controlled variables, and we know exactly what is happening. While you're doing this, you need to introduce several tools within the organization. The most important one is the action-based research that guides you what is needed, how we do things, to find we start with this product here or this service, but they measure the quality of it, and then it guides us all the way to what is the kind of incremental improvements we can introduce in place. Another tool is developed actually by Harvard University. It's called Innovation Engines, and they focus on making some kind of quick wins. Within 90 days, you have actually champions of innovation within the organization, have a system for innovation. So it's like, it embeds some kind of initial seeds for that. As we said, the ultimate goal for innovation is actually impacting policy and practice, either within the organization, or either it's government or private sector. People want to say some kind of significant change, improving my policies, instead of being top down or being heavy on regulation, and let's say focus on organic growth instead. And the same way with the practice, either as James mentioned, if it's either in the science sector, in the STEM, in the humanities, but the main thing I need to see the practice, that's what we mentioned before, the behavior itself, changing.
I think that also links into the how one measures innovation ROI, particularly looking at what are your corporate priorities, and you must align your innovation with your corporation. We're a tech VC, and we use something called Mixpanel, which some of you may be aware of. They have 5 billion data points, yet they educate us that each company should live and die by one matrix, and one matrix only. And if that's working in your favor, everything else falls into place. And interestingly, because the Olympics has just finished, I know the British Olympic rowing team live and die by one phrase, whether they're looking at the diet or to change the clothes or to change the boat. Every single decision that they make is based around one sentence, which is, will it make the boat go faster? Is it doing what we want to do? Forget everything else. Is it going to make us quicker? James, with that in mind, R&D is obviously a huge part of innovation, and I wonder if you can just touch on how one quantifies R&D spend within an organization and that so-called research premium or research intensity.
Well, just to agree with Hesham, I do believe that pilots and experiments, prototypes, are absolutely essential, and they're going to go wrong. If they didn't go wrong, they wouldn't be a pilot. So we can agree very much.
They wouldn't give you feedback then.
No, that's right. So if you look at R&D, it's not a perfect measure of innovation by any means. I mean, you're only looking at inputs. If you double the R&D expenditure, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to double the output of innovation. But you do know if you follow the European Union R&D expenditure, which is sort of 1.5% of GDP, if you carry on doing that for 20 or 30 years, you've got a guaranteed output, which is not very much. And that's why it's not just me, but the commissioner unelected for innovation in Europe a few years back rightly referred to an innovation crisis. The place to look, ladies and gentlemen, is the European Industrial R&D Scoreboard, which thankfully does not just cover European companies. It covers the top 2,500 R&D spenders in the world and looks at their research intensity, that's the budget versus the sales, the growth of that R&D budget, and so on. And one of the most interesting ones at the top of the list, actually, is Volkswagen. They've got the biggest R&D budget in the world, bigger than Toyota, and they've got one of the highest R&D intensities. To go back to your first question, was it enough? Well, if I think of all the time they spent trying to fool regulators with their defeat devices, how much money they put into that, and how much they've caught a cold at the end of that, I wish that money had been spent on R&D. So they might be the top spender by value. They're not the most research intensive. Robert Bosch is more intensive. They could do more. They've increased it a lot, not fast enough. So get behind the numbers to the realities as well. The lawyers, I fear the finance people, and some corrupt people are, wagging the dog as much as the scientists, I'm afraid.
Sure. And Jabir, just continuing on that theme and talking about the innovation premium, which is a well-used phrase when talking about innovation.
Sure.
What is the user prepared to pay for value?
Innovation premium is basically the top line and the bottom line of a company, the revenue and the profit. A good example is Apple on that thing. But to get an innovation premium, a company has to really understand not the voice of the customer, but the real voice of the customer. What is that? Basically, what is the new parameter of value that the customer is willing to pay for? That's the key. I'll take an example of Uber, but I think I'll put James to sleep, so I'll give you an example of a banana. Okay, if you take, a banana.
That's interesting.
Exactly. Now, if you look at the main parameters of a banana, first of all is the taste. You can't do much with the taste because it's mature. Color, you can't change that, right? The one parameter that you can change is the convenience, okay? So, because banana is a commodity, right? So now Chiquitita came up with a single banana wrapping, which you see in Starbucks now. So that was the main parameter of value that they changed, right? And that gave them significantly high profit. So the key is the main parameter of value. You got to identify that, and Apple is good at that. Chiquitita was good. They came up with, in Starbucks and McDonald's, you get 2 banana in a plastic wrap. So that's the key. And how do you find out the main parameter of value? That is understanding the real voice of the customer. So once you understand that, then you can really get innovation premium. That's the key. The main parameter.
And Roberto, does it have to be revolutionary, this innovation within organizations?
I love that we start the talk with does need to be technology. I'm sorry, James, on this. But that is part of the reason that innovation, the word tends to be a little intimidating to a lot of people. To me, innovation you measure in 3 horizons. And not horizons in time, it's horizons in risk. Being your first horizon, your core business, your everyday activity where you make the most money. In that, for example, and going back to how much innovation is enough, there is no innovation that is enough. You have to do this every day. This is your mindset. This is who you are as a company. If you call yourself an innovative company, this is who you are. No innovation is enough. And I'll give you an example. This is UPS, the carrier company of the US. They were facing a problem with cost and their operations for tracking packages in the US. And the standard approach to reduce costs is, well, cut the widgets, cut the trucks. And well, that comes with a bit of a problem because you have to fire people. Also, you have to overload the remaining trucks. Also, your service might be hurt. But that's what most people would do. And I've been in the oil industry, and that's what we've done. What do you do? You cut. You spend less. But they got smart. They said, listen, gas is the thing that we spend the most. So how about we change the routes of all the trucks, the delivery trucks, in a way they do not take left turns. Why not left turns? Because you don't have to stop at the traffic light. Right turns, you don't need to stop. So they reorganized all of the routes so that they would only take right turns. Simple, huh? Well, I'll tell you how simple. More than $10 million worth of savings in a year. And that's the equivalent of taking out more than 5,000 trucks out of the market, out of the streets. They didn't change anything. It's the exact same operation. It's just being smart around, and that's innovation. Innovation doesn't need to be your next iPod. Innovation is doing things differently, doing things smart. Now, the next horizon, it's more expansion. It's more about how do you penetrate a new market, a new segment, how do you build a new product. That's a bit more risky, obviously, and that's potentially a bit more expensive. But in there's a lot of innovation. I'll give you another example, Lego, which is that little brick company that we all played when we were kids. They were facing an issue a few years back that they were in a big competition with all the toy stores, all the other toys, and how do you differentiate? The kids are not buying the thing. So they went into a very big study of a human-centered innovation study, studied all of the kids, and they did something great with the kids. But it was not expected on that study is that they discovered, they look at the adults, and what they realized, people like me, which used to love to play with Legos, what I loved to do as a kid, I stopped playing Legos just because I'm not going to build a Star Wars little toy. I mean, so what they did is they realized these guys, if I give them a Lego and their kids have Legos, it's a whole community thing, and they built a new line of Legos which is called Lego architecture, which are big Legos, quite expensive for grown-ups. And It has a big label that says, this is for grown-ups, so that kids won't buy them and can be frustrated about it. So these guys identified, okay, what are we good at? We're good at making little bricks that connect to each other. We have a bunch of designers. We have distribution channels where we can sell our Legos for kids. How do we monetize that and come up with a new idea? And they, through understanding their clients, they come out with a completely new segment, which is only for adults, and it's wow, it's magic. So they made a lot of money.
Touching on ideas which you mentioned, and I'll pass this one to Noor, is the idea generation rate, how important is that? I know INSEAD did a report quite recently which has been quite well read on the subject of innovation.
I mean, I think it's really important. I just agree with everybody here that you just have to constantly generate ideas, and it has to be part of the culture. And it has to be in line with the company's strategy as well. So, I mean, a very interesting example is, so you have Jeff Bezos, the founder and CEO of Amazon, decided that the company's strategy is to compete on price and to be very, very frugal and very cost effective. So he wanted to embed that in the culture, and he installed a shock a rule that will get people's attention as the company grows, which is everybody at Amazon has to work on a desk that's made out of a cheap door that's bought from a hardware store with legs installed on it. And the reason they did that is to get that shock value where when somebody new comes in, when you have 10,000 employees, that person is going to say, why are we doing that? And then you can explain to them that we have to be very frugal, we have to be very, very cost effective. So I think the idea generation is a really important thing to have, where you have everybody in the company that's constantly generating ideas.
So once it is a culture within the organization, which we've touched on a bit, Anshul, how does one track the continuous improvement within an organization? What KPIs does one need on their dashboard to monitor this innovation?
Before that, I would put a perspective there that there is something which is measurable and there is something which is immeasurable. Now, measurable innovation is something which comes out in your financial statements, which is your process efficiency, your revenues, your margins, whatnot. But immeasurable is how many lives you are touching upon with innovation, which none of the organizations are trying to attempt at. Now, there are startups who have done it. Like we talk about Uber, Airbnb, all these startups. Now they get so much of data feed in terms of how much lives they are touching upon. That's where they attempt to go for something new. Like Uber is piloting driverless cars. So that is something which, based on the data, you can actually get into. Now, if you continuously look at